Hello everyone, I thought I'd make another Steve Paddock video. There's just so much about this that has made my jaw drop. It was just horrible, and when we go into these tragedies we can talk about them and analyze, what makes them so horrific and what should be done about them. Stephen Paddock, unfortunately, was planned very well and executed that plan extremely well. And he had an elevated position. He had, from the 32nd floor of that hotel / casino, he had the right kind of weapons. He had a target-rich environment, and none of those targets were behind anything that was remotely resembled cover, or even concealment. And that, my friends, is the recipe for a slaughter. There were 22,000 people in that arena watching that music festival. And he fired a total of, I think, 1,100 rounds, according to police, 200 of which were aimed at a security guard who, I guess, knocked on the door while he was slaughtering people, and he fired 200 rounds at the guard, wounding him, and the guard managed to call the police and get them outside the door of his hotel a lot quicker. And they broke in an hour later, found him dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound and 23 of his 47 guns. The guy had like 47 guns, 33 of which had been purchased in the 12 months leading to the massacre. This is not often mentioned, but he appeared to have been scoping out other places like Chicago and places in Santa Monica where he could achieve a very high kill tally. And again, he killed a total of 58 people and wounded 500 more, plus 500, well over 500 more. And this kind of devastation has not been seen in America. Omar Manton, or however you pronounce his last name, he killed a total of 50 people and wounded about the same number. But Stephen Paddock, he not only killed more people, he wounded way more. And so far, even the most successful spree killers generally don't get above, 24 kills. But he got dozens of kills and hundreds of wounded. And this was just a nightmare. And it was a perfect storm, which Stephen Paddock unfortunately had the genius to create. And he left no motive or anything like that. ISIS claims that he was acting on behalf of them, but I don't think so. He, as his brother said, he didn't seem to have any religious or political affiliations, nor was there any record of him ever being associated with any sort of Muslims, extremist or otherwise. And this tragedy will be dissected again and again, and there are a lot more people looking into this tragedy than me. I read an article by a former Marine who had an input of a retired Green Beret, Army Special Forces, and he was a sniper, and he said that if Stephen Paddock had better marksmanship, he could have, and better fire discipline, he could have killed way more people. That may be true, but I think the number of wounded might have gone down then, because it didn't take a expert marksman to do what he did. He just selected a great target. It was just, there were 22,000 people in that area, and he basically hit the jackpot. And since then, obviously, this shouldn't come as a surprise, but hotel security in Las Vegas, casino security in Las Vegas has just gone way up. I mean, they're checking people with the metal detectors. They got, all that jazz going on. And what else is Stephen Paddock? What's often not mentioned is that he didn't have he didn't even bring all of his firearms to the hotel with him. There were some in his car, and there were some still at his house. And it's just, crazy and he bought some pretty high-end guns. He had, an LMT and a Daniel Defense, both of them ARs, and neither of them are cheap. They both cost like between $1,500 to $2,000, and sometimes even more. He also had a few AKs and a AR-10, which fires a full rifle round at .308 or a .762 by 51 NATO. And that's a pretty nasty round. It's the ideal deer round, which roughly translates it's to the ideal human killing round. And so we got this guy who has military grade weapons, and some people say even better than military grade weapons. He had weapons that were better than what they would give the average Army or Marine infantryman. And they'd been customized and all that jazz. And he had a good sight on it and everything. He had a bipod. He had a collection of magazines so he could reload very quickly. And the steady stream, it was just suppressing fire, basically. Just a steady stream of just shooting. And it was easy for him to hit the targets because they were all packed, obviously they were all packed in together like sardines. And it was just easy for him to do what he did. And I hope we will never see a tragedy on this scale again. But hopefully we can all learn from this and take better precautions to prevent things like this. What Stephen Paddock was the people say that, he had a psychotic break. I don't buy that one bit, because he had planned this very efficiently. Again, he had selected this target specifically. I mean, he was scoping out other locations in Santa Monica, California, and Chicago, Illinois. But he settled on this one in Las Vegas. And we don't know why he did it. There is evidence that he had, some financial trouble, like he was on a losing streak in the casinos. That might be a possible motive. And it was also known that he was a germaphobe. And not to mention possibly bipolar, but he was never formally diagnosed. And we will never know the full truth behind Stephen Paddock, because again, he's dead. And because he killed himself, he can't give us the answers we seek, or that a forensic psychologist would seek. But it's not uncommon for people who commit regular old suicide to just shoot themselves and not bother to leave a note or anything like that, explaining why they killed themselves. And they often take the answer to the grave with them. And considering the fact that Stephen Paddock is now a bunch of scattered ash, he can't give us the answers. And so we'll probably never know for sure. They did, but on his computer they didn't find anything that could be a motive like, political affiliation or anything, or religious affiliation or anything like that. They did find a bunch of stuff on, SWAT tactics and basically how to, conduct a killing like this. But they also found a lot of, hundreds of images of child porn and all that. So basically all I found was a how-to guide in child porn. That was pretty much it. Or so they're saying. But the bump fire is a great way to get around the restrictions on automatic weapons. If you want more information, look it up. I'm not going to go into it in this video. We're going to stick to Stephen Paddock. But anyway, again, this case is highly unusual. He was fairly successful. He had a pretty good life going for him. He was able to get a girlfriend and all that stuff. He seemed to be able to function pretty well in society when he wanted to. Granted, he often chose not to and was much a recluse. And he didn't just snap. A lot of people think he just snapped and did this, but in truth, these things take years. And with all the meticulous planning he put forth, like going as far as to have security cameras outside of his room and all this ammunition and all that stuff, this was not him just snapping. This was a lot of planning. It must have taken at least a year, because he bought most of those weapons before he committed the massacre, about 12 months before he committed the massacre. And the planning was just exact. And now if you look at this shooting, he fires in steady streams rather than in short controlled bursts. And now one former Green Beret said that, he probably would have gotten more kills if he had just fired in steady bursts and selected more targets more accurately, more specifically, and with more precision. But if he'd done that, he probably would have gotten more kills, but he probably would have gotten way less wounded. Remember, he had over 500 wounded, and for like 1,100 rounds fired. That means for half of his shots were hits, and he had like stacks of magazines stocked full of ammo. Some of his magazines were capable of holding 100 rounds. This was just a lot of planning, and he clearly knew what he was doing. And sadly, a lot of people died as a result. His thing is that, again, it was just elevated position, right weapons, target-rich environment, nothing to conceal his intended victims, and yeah, it was just a nightmare, a perfect storm that he created. And I just think we will never find why he did it, because the only person that can answer that is dead. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. We should try to understand people like him so we can prevent tragedies like this in the future. And the more knowledge is power. And we need to learn everything we can about this guy. Because, sadly, there will be more people like him. And there will be a lot more candles and vigils coming our way. Anyway, thank you for your time. I hope you liked my video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you can, leave a donation. It's for a good cause. See y'all later.